Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are enjoying your day. Today I want to open the Tennessee Cold Case Files. We're going to talk about a disappearance death that occurred in 1980. Before we get into the unsolved case of Avery Peaches Short, I want to give you guys a little backstory. Many of you guys may not know that I was born and raised in East Tennessee. And in 1980, I was not even a teenager yet. So I can remember this story. Last night, me and my sister were talking about, just things in general. And we started talking about things that happened in the news in our childhood, and the subject came up of Avery Peaches Short. So during the time of her disappearance, a lot of things kept going around in the city. Like I said, I was born and raised in the city, and things get around. People start talking. A lot of rumors were spread. Nobody could find little Avery Peaches Short. Um, parents were already um should I say, on the alert, if I could say it that way. As far as children disappearing, and the reason why I say that it is when this happened, it was during the time of the Atlanta child murders, and so parents were already on alert. They were keeping their children close. They were holding them a little tighter, restricting restricting them from going, playing, in areas far away from home. Back in the 80s, it's a different time. Back in the 80s, people were more trusting. And I remember as a little kid, we could wander around the neighborhood, and we didn't even have to come home until the street lights came on. It's not that way nowadays, unfortunately. And but it was that way back then. It was also the age of the latchkey kid. Neighbors would look out for neighbors. Neighbors would look out for children. Neighbors could still discipline children, then take them home to their parents, and the parents would discipline them again, for doing something wrong, or whatever in the neighborhood, right? So, like I said, this leads us up to the cold case of Avery Peaches Short. So in 1980, a 6-year-old girl was sent to the store by her mom, Hazel Smith. Her name was Avery Peaches Short. It was the day after Christmas in 1980. She went to the store and she was never heard or seen again by her mom. So, when rumors were going around, Avery and her mom, they lived in a housing project. Um, and like I said, it was a safer time. And so back then we would all get sent to the store by our parents. It was no problem. Back then, believe it or not, you could even buy cigarettes as a child as long as your mom sent you to the store with a note. So when you're saying you're gonna send a 6-year-old to the store to get a Coke, no, it was neither here nor there. Now Avery and her mom lived in the housing projects in South Knoxville. Now, I lived on the other side of town, but rumor quickly spread like wildfire that this little 6-year-old girl went to the store to get her mama pop, and she was never seen or heard from again. So here's a picture of her mom. At this point in time, her mom was it was at the time her mom was in her 20s. She was a 22-year-old single divorced mom. She had other children besides Avery. Avery was her oldest, and Avery was 6. So her mom was preparing dinner. She told the Texas that she had smoked her last cigarette, but she was thirsty. She didn't have any drinks in the house. So she sent Avery, Peaches Short. Her mom called her Peaches Short because she said when she was born, her little face was as round as a peach. And that's how she got that name. So her mom sent her to the store with a Coke. Now, here's where the story becomes really, really creepy. So Peaches Short's mom, she used to fool off and on with a guy by the name of Mitchell Reed. So prior to Avery going to the store for her mom, Mitchell Reed came to the house. She had quite a history with Mitchell Reed. He wanted her to be his girlfriend. She said no a couple of times, but she was still, fooling around with him from time to time. Mitchell Reed at the time was married, which is probably why Hazel wouldn't agree to being his girlfriend, right? So Mitchell Reed threw some money on the table. He then left the house. After he threw the change on the table, Hazel picked up the money, gave it to Peaches, which was 58 cents. She then sent Peaches to the store. The store at that time, her mama lived down the street. There it wasn't more than her mom said, more than a 15-minute, walk from her house to the store round trip. It just only took about 15 minutes round trip. So she buttoned up Peaches' shorts. She tied up her little Mickey Mouse tennis shoes, and she sent Peaches to the store. On the way out the door, Peaches turned around and told her mama. She said, "Mama, I love you," and that's the last time that Hazel would hear her voice, unfortunately and sadly. So Peaches goes to the store. Detectives question the kids in the neighborhood after she disappeared, but it says that she stopped and talked to some friends for a little minute. She left the house about 3:30. It was 5 o'clock when her mom started to get worried about her. Her mom, prior to that, just figured she was outside playing. So she went from talking to her friends, she crossed over the railroad tracks. There was a railroad tracks dividing the housing project from the store. The store was just on the other side of the railroad tracks. And she goes to the store, she gets the soda. She was never heard from again. Now, when Hazel starts to get worried about Peaches. She then she crosses on the other side of the railroad tracks. She goes to the store for herself. The store um the store employee says that yes, we did see her. She bought the soda, she bought a Coke, and then she left, and they never seen her again. So her mom then goes back home. She calls the police. The police come out. She tells the police that her daughter is missing. They immediately start searching for Avery. There's a wooded area around this housing project just because it's in like the county. It's on the border of the county and the city when it comes to Knox County. So this housing project was really technically between city and county. So they start searching the wooded area around the complex. The mom told them that she would never wander off. She would never get in a car with strangers. She would never talk to strangers. So back then, like I said, people had started becoming paranoid about their children wandering off because it was the time of the Atlanta child murders. So you would instruct. My mom instructed us: don't talk to strangers, don't get in the car with strangers. If somebody talk to you, start running, start screaming, hollering for help. Just get out of the way, right? And so I'm sure Hazel instructed her child, which 6-year-old Avery, which was the oldest at the time, to do the same thing. So, like I said, her mom walks to the store. The store clerk says, "Yes, we saw her. She was in here. It was the last time." The store clerk, Hazel, goes back home. She calls the police. The police come out. She's telling them what happened. And as she's talking to the police about what happened, um, prior to them combing the woods, she told them, um, that a guy named Mitchell Reed, which was, a friend of hers slash wanted to be boyfriend of hers, came to the house prior and gave her the money for the coke. So he left, and after he left, that is when she bundled up Avery and sent her to the store. And the reason why I mentioned Mitchell Reed is very interesting. This thing with Mitch Reed. So she goes so the police then, like I said, starts to search the wooded area. They couldn't find her. They searched along the railroad tracks because at that point in time, vagrants or homeless people, we call them nowadays, would sleep on the railroad tracks. They would walk up and sleep on alongside the railroad tracks. They would walk up and down, the railroad tracks. And so that is the reason why they start searching the railroad tracks. Not to mention it was, literally down the hill from her apartment, right? So they did that. They couldn't find Avery. It wasn't until 24 to 36 hours that they called in police detectives. And as the police detectives are reminiscing on this case. I found an article, and they say that they hate that it was such a lag in time. But as soon as the police detectives got on the case, they questioned the mom. She told them that Reed had given them the money. She gave them the background on Mitchell Reed. Nowadays, you know, we know that even back then, but more so now because people were more trusting back then. You know that if you are a single mom, you have to be very hesitant and cautious when it comes to inviting kids in your life. Now, unfortunately, Mitchell Reed, who was married at the time, lived in him and his wife lived in the housing project as well. So she starts telling him about Mitchell. She tells him that Mitchell wanted to be her boyfriend, even though he had a wife. She told him no several times. And on the day that Peaches Short went missing, he came to the house. They had a brief argument because she wouldn't sleep with him, and he left. And so she told him about that. So after she told the detectives about that, they went to find Mitchell Reed. He became a person of interest, if you will, if you would, right? So the police detectives, you have volunteers searching. In 24 hours, there were over 100 volunteers searching. They had the dogs out. They were searching the wooded areas, like I said, the railroad tracks. They were searching everywhere. There was no sign of Peaches Short. The store clerk once again said that he did see her. It's like she vanished without a trace. So as the volunteers and the other police officers are searching the woods, they go find Mitch Reed, and they bring him in for questioning. So Mitch says that after he left Hazel and Peaches and the other kids, he went to the corner store to buy a cup of coffee. He sat in his car and drank the cup of coffee, but he did not see Peaches, right? And so after they questioned Mitchell, they said he was really cagey. He became the number one person of interest. He was evasive. He said that he hadn't seen her. They later would search his car, and the dogs would find the scent of not only Peaches Short, but the scent of her mother as well as the other children, because Hazel and Reed said that he would frequently give them rides to, wherever it is that they had to go. Hazel didn't have a car, so she pretty much was using him for probably rides and money and things of that nature, right? She said she always felt leery um of Mitch Reed. She just had a bad feeling that he was always up to no good. And so that is why she, pretty much handled him with what the old folks say was she handled him with a long handle spoon, right? So police, after they questioned him, they let him go initially, and the police questioned him several times. So while they questioning him, they say that they also questioned over 100 people. Now within this group of over 100 people, which were living in the community as well, they knocked on doors. Like I said, they searched the woods. They went door to door in the apartment complex. Nobody but the children seen Peaches Short outside that day because, like I said, it was a day after Christmas and they were outside playing. So one little boy that was at the store the same time that Peaches Shorts was at the store recalls her leaving the store and going up to a brown car and talking to a man that was slender in build and balding. And this was um the identifier, I guess, if you will, the description, I'm sorry, of of Mitch Reed at the time. He was slender in build, he was balding, and he drove a brown Cadillac. So that was one thing that the police had to go on. There still wasn't enough to make an arrest. The little boy would go on to recant, his description of Reed, and the police suspect that his parents urged him to recant that because when it comes to black people, they don't like to deal with the police. They were leery of the police. They didn't want their little boy to get in any type of friction or trouble in the community. So the little boy later recanted his description, and that was that on it. So they still don't have enough evidence to arrest Reed, but he's the number one suspect, right? And so as time goes on, they still can't they search for days and days. It was really cold outside. Temperatures, reaching below zero. So they still can't find little Avery. Rumors start spreading around. There was all kind of rumors going around. People were saying that they found her body wrapped up in a blanket on the railroad tracks. They were saying she got taken off by a homeless group of people, and she was never seen from again. They were even suspecting that she may have been taken at the time by the Atlanta child murderer, because they didn't have a suspect then either in those cases, right? So like I said, they never could, find Avery. Unfortunately, Peaches Short. Unfortunately, this is a picture of the then 77-year-old Mitchell Reed. Mitchell Reed. At the time of this photo, it was 2010. He was 77 years old. He was residing in a nursing home. He had dementia, and he sometimes was, hooked up to a ventilator. But back then, like I said, they questioned him over and over again. He refused to take a polygraph test. His wife actually took a polygraph test and she passed it because she did know who Peaches Short was. She was just one of the kids playing in the community, right? So even and also back then, as they're interviewing these hundreds of people, as well as Mitchell Reed over and over again, as well as his wife, they a psychic from the area in Blount County contacted them. So they went to the psychic's home. They picked up the psychic. They brought him to the Montgomery Village area where Peaches Short went missing. He walked the railroad tracks. He searched the woods. He told them a lot of stuff that they didn't put in the article, but clearly, he could not, lead them to where Peaches Short body was found. And so her body went missing, and her mom, was worried about her this whole time. Mitchell Reed wasn't worried about anything. The police said he was very flip with them. Um, he was enjoying the attention. He was laughing and joking with them. He was really comfortable with the police because he was a career criminal at the time. In 1980, he had been in and out of jail since he was 15 years old. Interestingly enough, about Mitch Reed, after they questioned him, ironically in 1983, he was convicted of a burglary of some kind of rental shop or something like that. The article said, and he was sent to jail in 1985 for over a decade. But between 1980 and 1982, that he also had been questioned in a strangulation of a 62-year-old woman on the other side of town. They couldn't find any evidence of him actually doing it, but they did suspect him because he was also involved with the 62-year-old woman that had been strangled in her apartment and found. So once again, he refused a polygraph test. Once again, they had to let him go. But like I said, in 1983, he was charged and convicted with a burglary of a rental shop. In 1985, he was sentenced to over a decade and a half in prison. He was incarcerated for over a decade and a half. He got out after that. And interestingly enough, in 2002, it would be his last appearance in front of a judge. He pled guilty to a misdemeanor assault of a child. So Mitchell clearly has a history of not only violence but burglary and theft. He was a career criminal. So getting back to 1980, Peaches is still gone, and the day after Christmas, 1980, a Christmas and a New Year, came, and went. So in 1982, a father and son were hunting in a wooded area, and they were actually hunting on farmland that was owned by um, the University of Tennessee. this land was used for cattle and horses and grazing, and whatever they were doing. I guess experimenting with the horses. I don't know what they were doing on it. And alongside this area where Peach's short skull was found, um just a mile or two down the road, there was another extension of owned by the University of Tennessee, and it was actually the forensics area. And it has always been rumored that they would experiment on dead bodies. They would put dead bodies out in the element naked, see how long it would take it to decompose, and they did all types of research of that area using not only human bodies but pigs and all kind of things, all kind of experiments, back then to see how long it, in what condition the body would be after it lay out in the cold for so long, and all these sorts of things, right? So it's just on the side note. So, like I said, in 1982, a father and son were out hunting rabbits. They stumbled upon a skull. They immediately called the police. The police came to this area. It was on the UT, the University of Tennessee's extension form is what they called it, and they stumbled upon a skull. And at the other end of the skull, not far away from the skull, was a little pair of Mickey Mouse tennis shoes, where her feet would have been. The skeletal remains were there, and also her hair was still there, and the little ribbons that her mom tied in her hair were still faded, but they were still on the little hair. We know that hair does not decompose. So, because of that hair not decomposing and the skeletal remains, in 1982, about 2 years after she disappeared, Avery Peaches Short's remains were found on this cattle farm. Her bones were actually found. The skull was sticking out, and the rest of her body was underneath something they called a cattle chute. And so they tipped the cattle chute over, and that is where they found the rest of the skeletal remains. There was also wrapped around the skeletal remains was a coat. The coat was buttoned all the way up to the neck. They said her undergarments were still on her body. The little shoes laid to the side, they were sticking out of the dirt, they say. They also said that there was a 9-inch gauge piece of wire, barbed wire, wrapped around the little girl's throat. And they are suspecting that the killer wrapped the wire around the little girl's throat to make sure that she was dead. But they believe Peaches was strangled to death in the car, and then taken to this area and buried. This area, interestingly enough, was 15 minutes away from the housing projects, but it was also 1 mile, a mile to a mile and a half away from Mitchell Reed's family's home. His mother and father still lived in this home in Rockford, which was only a mile to a mile and a half way away from this extension farm, and this is where her remains were found. So after the remains were found in 1982, Mitchell Reed was questioned again. They said that he was laughing and joking around with police detectives. He talked about everything from his job to his police record to his what was going on in his personal life. He talked about Hazel Smith and him and Hazel's relationship, but he never would admit to not only not seeing Avery Peaches Short, even though it said that when he was outside he said that admitted to going to the store and buying a cup of coffee and drinking the coffee in his car. But what he had not told the police, but what we later learned, that the store clerk said that that brown Cadillac was parked in the parking lot of the store on the far end. Police later learned that is the reason why, another reason why he was the number one suspect. So it is quite possible that Avery, where she wouldn't talk to strangers, she wouldn't get in the car with strangers. It's quite possible that she may have gotten in the car with Mitchell Reed because she knew him. He was familiar. He was always around their house. And so, but to this day, Mitchell Reed is now dead. The mom, Hazel Smith, is a lot older. Avery Peaches Shorts would have been in her 40s by now. This case is decades old, and it is still a cold case file, even though the number one suspect is dead. It is still considered to be unsolved because they never arrested anybody for the death of Avery Peaches Short. Now, I want to give you guys my opinion because before I close the video, I do believe that, and my opinion is that the police were right. I think they were right for suspecting Reed when it comes to the murder because he did mention he got angry. Hazel Smith, the mother, said that he got angry with her when she refused to be his old lady, as you call it, or his girlfriend, even though he was married, and said that he would get her back for that because the night before um, Christmas night, come to find out, the reason why he came to her house that next day, the day after Christmas, was that he found out that she had spent a night, another guy had spent a night in her house. And so he heard about this, he was upset about it, and he went to her home to confront her about it. And he said that he would pay her back for this. And that a little bit after that, Avery was sent to the store. She was never heard from again. So the police suspect, as well as I suspect, that this was his way of getting back with her because he knew that little 6 year old Avery Peaches Short was her mama's pride and joy. This was his way of paying her back. And I think that had he not went to jail in 1983 for a decade and a half in 1985, uh, I think that more women would have come up strangled. And the police said that he looked like a rat, sitting there when they were interrogating him, smoking on his cigarettes, giggling and laughing, refusing, to take a polygraph test. The police said the retired police officers said in the article that 20 years after the disappearance and death of Avery Peaches Short. He was then in a nursing home before he had died. That is when his picture was taken. They questioned him, and even though he had dementia, when you mentioned the name Peaches, he immediately recognized the name, and they were questioning him because he recognized the name. And he said that he told the police that they were barking up the wrong tree and that he didn't do it. He didn't recognize the name of the brewer, the Miss Brewer that was found strangled in her apartment, even though he knew her, but he did recognize the name of Detective Winston. And so after they mentioned the name Winston, he started he admitted to knowing Brewer, but he also would never he never he said he didn't do it pretty much. And he never admitted to um killing Avery Peaches Short. So he died of, and so the death of Avery Peaches Short remains to this day an unsolved mystery. And so that is what happened. And I still remember it. And so that's all I got, you guys. You guys, I hope you like this video. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share them in the comment section below. Thank you guys for listening to this video. And I'm going to talk to you guys next time. Bye bye. Peace.